So now two people have brought up a novel called 2034 by Admiral James Stavridis about a nuclear war with China. Stavridis is said to be close to Hillary Clinton. What do you make of the risk of nuclear confrontation? Though I kind of thought you had covered that.
I don't know this novel. I'm terrified of reading it. I really don't want to read something like that because these people, they sort of feast. You remember the film Doctor Strangelove? There are actually people who sort of, can I use a colloquial? I mean, they get off on war. For them, there's pleasure in it, and I find that horrifying. It's horrifying. But is there a threat of a nuclear war? Listen, I hope not. I mean, I hope it's just bluster and at the last minute everybody blinks and no cars bang into each other. I hope not. Obviously, I'm a human being. We are all human beings. I've read Oe's novel about the book about the bomb in Hiroshima. I've read John Hershey. I've read my dear Wilfred Burchett, one of the great Australian journalists. I don't know if any of you remember the work of Wilfred Burchett, one of the great journalists.
Oh, yes.
But Wilfred was there basically just a few days after the bomb fell in Hiroshima. Extraordinary brave journalism. Wilfred went and interviewed Ho Chi Minh. I mean, what a guy. I don't think people read Wilfred anymore. But Wilfred, John Hershey's book on Hiroshima, extraordinarily good. Later, Jonathan Shell. I commend to you The Fate of the Earth by Jonathan Shell. Jonathan used to write also, I believe, for the New Yorker. What a book. I mean, it was after the fact. Hershey was there. Wilfred was there. Kenzemono also wrote after the fact. One of the great Japanese novelists of the 20th century wrote a terrific book on Hiroshima. I mean, what's happened, friends, is that our old Hiroshima Day has become a shadow of itself. It's a few old peace activists who gather together. We all sort of meet and then we bemoan the use of nuclear weapons. We've got to make Hiroshima Day a mass activity again. When I was a little boy in Calcutta on Hiroshima Day, my entire school had an essay writing contest, and all of us had to write an essay, what we think about peace. They would show us images and tell us about Hiroshima, and then there'd be a prize winning essay, handwritten obviously, which would be taped on the wall, and all the children would walk by and read that essay. And that was a mass a campaign to make us understand peace. Today, we don't have anything like that. We need that. I don't think people understand the gravity of, what do they call it? Amazing, right? Limited nuclear war. Limited nuclear war. Have we lost our minds? Battlefield nuclear weapons. What other kind of nuclear weapon is there? Is there another kind of nuclear weapon than, well, obviously what they are saying is it's only to be used against other troops, not civilians. I understand. I'm not an idiot. I get what they're saying. On the other hand, the very fact that we call it a battlefield nuclear weapon shows the surrender of human morality.
So I have two more questions and then we're going to go to dialogue. One is, do you see parallels with the US-Japanese conflict and subsequent war over who would control the Pacific with Australia on the American side? And that's from Siddhartha Banerjee.
Well, there would be a parallel if the Chinese were attempting to take territory other than their own territory. What we see the Chinese engaged in a project called the Belt and Road, but we don't see the Chinese entering Central Asia and calling it their colony. I mean, remember, the Japanese were not passive and the US then bombed them, whatever. The Japanese were extraordinarily aggressive. Japanese took first Manchuria. The Japanese started a war against China in 1937, the Marco Polo Bridge incident. China had the longest World War II. We forget all this, 1937 to 1945, and then the Civil War to 49. That's 2 years before the World War II starts in Europe. That's in 1937. That's the Marco Polo Bridge. So that was a completely different context. Japan was the aggressor there, no doubt about it. Japan then attacks Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. No doubt Japan was aggressive. So I don't see any parallel with the situation of the 1930s, because China is not, fighting to take anybody's land away. And the Chinese have made it clear they don't want a war. I mean, I've been traveling to China over the course of the past decade, talked to lots of people. The last thing they want is to engage. They know that the United States is far more sophisticated militarily, but they can defend their borders. And that's where the danger comes. I don't think the United States has absorbed the fact that the Chinese have the military capacity to defend their borders. And they may be joined by the Russians. You see, 20 years ago, China and Russia signed a strategic treaty. Just a few months ago, they renewed that 20-year-old treaty. Putin was asked, why don't you sign a military treaty? This is just a strategic treaty. Why not Putin said something which I think people in Washington should take seriously. Putin said, we don't need a military treaty. Our strategic treaty is sufficient. This means if the United States goes to war against China, will Russia come in on the side of China? Just imagine that. We're not talking about the 1930s where people had a hybrid sort of situation of tanks plus horses and so on. Our war technology is very sophisticated now and extraordinarily dangerous. We don't want to touch this.